Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're cutting through some of the common narratives about borderline personality disorder, or BPD.
Yeah, BPD. We want to uncover something really foundational.
Exactly. It's genetic blueprints.
Yeah.
I mean, many of us are familiar with the challenging aspects.
Oh, sure. The intense emotional stuff, fear of abandonment, relationships.
Yeah, that turbulence. But what's really kind of groundbreaking in the material we've looked at is how deeply these patterns might be wired into our biology, right from the start.
But not like a single cause, more like a significant predisposition.
Right. So our mission today is really to offer you some clarity, maybe reduce some shame around it, moving beyond just the symptoms.
Understanding the deep roots.
We're starting right at the beginning of the story, the biological side, specifically the genetic influences.
And we've got that example, Anna.
Yeah, we'll meet Anna. She's fictional, but really illustrative, helps understand the lived experience.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because when we talk mental health, it's often, well, it's easy to focus just on experiences.
Or willpower, even.
Right, or willpower. But the science we're digging into today, it clearly shows there's a significant biological piece to the puzzle.
And that's where we're starting with BPD.
Exactly. And this perspective, it allows for, more compassion.
How so?
Well, framing symptoms not as like flaws, but maybe as the mind's its profound attempt, really, to adapt or defend itself when faced with these inherent vulnerabilities.
That makes sense. It feels like BPD is often described through its most visible symptoms.
The ones that grab your attention.
Yeah, those unstable relationships, the impulsivity, maybe dramatic mood swings, that really profound, almost visceral fear of abandonment.
That's what people often focus on, yeah, in conversations, media portrayals.
But what seems rarely explored, though, is how it actually develops, how these really deep patterns actually begin.
It's like seeing the waves on the surface.
But not looking at the currents underneath. Yeah. So to give us a more tangible sense of this, let's think about Anna. She's 29, described as bright, creative, perceptive.
Someone with a real capacity for life, you'd think.
Exactly. Yet she describes feeling like she's walking a tightrope every single day without a net.
Wow. That's intense.
Imagine like a simple text message left on read.
Okay.
For Anna, that doesn't just trigger mild annoyance. It can trigger hours of just crushing anxiety.
Hours from a text.
Yeah, or say a small disagreement with a friend. It can spiral into this overwhelming shame, this intense fear she's about to be completely abandoned.
That fear of abandonment again.
It's central. Her relationships often swing, between intense, almost dizzying closeness and then sudden, really painful ruptures.
Is that back and forth?
And when the emotional pain gets too much, just unbearable, she sometimes turns it inward.
How do you mean?
Feeling numb, completely worthless, or even sometimes resorting to self-harm.
Wow, okay.
Because for her, maybe the physical pain offers a temporary relief, albeit a destructive one.
A distraction from the emotional storm inside.
Precisely. And she's heard it all her life. You're too sensitive. You're too intense. You're too much.
Those labels.
But no one's ever really helped her understand why she feels this way. Why are these reactions just so amplified for her?
It's a powerful story.
It is. But it's important to remember, Anna's story, while powerful, it's just one example, right? BPD can look very different.
Absolutely. It presents in diverse ways.
Her narrative helps put a human face on it, but it's not the only face. And for context, studies also suggest BPD is diagnosed about 3 times more often in females.
Right, which Anna's example reflects.
And there's another layer of complexity, too. Personality disorders, they rarely appear in pure form.
Oh, the co-occurrence issue. Yeah.
Exactly. Data suggests a huge majority, like 74–85% of people diagnosed with one personality disorder also meet criteria for at least one other.
So it's often a complex tapestry of traits and experiences we're looking at, not just one neat box.
Definitely not neat.
Which really highlights the complexity, doesn't it? And it brings up that fundamental question. Where do these deep patterns, this intense sensitivity Anna feels, where does it actually start?
Right. Beyond just describing symptoms.
Exactly. Science is moving towards uncovering those underlying factors. And while it's so important to state, BPD isn't written in stone just by genes.
Yeah?
The evidence is incredibly clear. It absolutely has a heritable component.
Okay, so a heritable component, what does that mean in practice?
It means a significant chunk of that core sensitivity, that vulnerability we see, it can genuinely run in families, passed down.
So not a simple on-off switch, but a definite predisposition. Okay, so what does the research actually show us about this genetic link? What kind of studies?
Well, the main evidence comes from these large family and twin studies.
Right, those are good for separating out genes and environment.
Precisely. They're powerful tools for that. And these studies consistently indicate that roughly, let's say 35 to 65% of the risk for BPD comes from genetic factors.
35 to 65%. That's a pretty wide range, but significant.
It is. And a large Swedish study, a really big one, they narrowed it down more closely to about 46% heritability.
46%. Okay, so just under half.
Just under half. And what that means, for listeners who follow this stuff, is that nearly half of the differences we see in BPD risk within a population, that can be attributed to genetic variations.
Okay, so genes are important, clearly.
Incredibly important, yes. But, and this is key, they're definitely not the whole story.
Right, that other 54% or so.
Exactly. Life experiences, relationships, trauma, other environmental factors, they account for a substantial part of the remaining risk.
Okay. That balance is crucial.
It really is. And to make it even more concrete, consider some of the family risk data. It's fascinating.
Likely.
If someone has a sibling with BPD, their own risk is almost 5 times higher than the average person's.
Yeah, 5 times. That's huge.
It is. Now, compare that to cousins. If you have a cousin with BPD, your risk is still elevated, sure, but it drops quite a bit, only about 1.7 times higher.
Okay, so a clear drop-off with more distant relatives.
Precisely. That gradient, where the risk decreases with genetic distance, that powerfully illustrates the genetic contribution. It's not just random chance.
That makes sense. A very clear pattern tied to how closely related people are. It really makes you think. And I guess scientists, when they first started looking, they were probably hoping for the BPD gene.
The single smoking gun. Yeah, that's often the initial hope in genetics.
But what they found is, well, way more complex. This is where it gets really interesting for me. If there's no single gene, what have they found?
Exactly. That search for one single definitive BPD gene. It hasn't panned out like that.
So what's the picture then?
What they discovered instead is what's called a polygenic pattern.
Polygenic, meaning?
Meaning we're not talking about one faulty gene causing the whole thing. We're talking hundreds, maybe even thousands of small genetic variations.
Hundreds or thousands, wow.
Yeah, and each one contributes just a tiny, subtle influence to the overall risk.
Okay, so it's not one big problem, but lots of tiny little things adding up.
Think of it less like a single instrument playing a really loud wrong note, and more like an entire orchestra, where maybe each musician plays their note just slightly off-key sometimes.
Okay, I like that analogy.
The individual variations are small, maybe insignificant on their own, but their cumulative effect, all added together, that's what becomes significant in terms of risk or sensitivity.
A symphony of subtle influences then, rather than a solo mistake. That really changes how you think about causes, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It moves away from a simple defect model.
And those incredibly complex gene names you sometimes see in the research papers like SARNS5 or DPYD.
Oh yeah, the alphabet soup.
Exactly. What do those kinds of genes actually do in a way that helps us grasp this polygenic idea without, needing a PhD in biology?
Right. Well, these genes, they often touch on really fundamental building blocks of how our brains and bodies work.
Okay, like what kind of processes?
Things like how our nerve cells communicate with each other, the signaling, or how our bodies perceive and manage stress, the whole stress response system.
And emotional regulation.
Yes, or even how finely tuned our emotional systems are. Some genes might influence neurotransmitter function, others might affect, say, the insulation around nerve fibers, or how cells stick together.
So really basic biological stuff.
Really basic fundamental stuff. So it's not about one specific BPD gene being broken. It's more like a subtle interplay across many genes that sort of modulate these core systems.
Leading to maybe increased sensitivity or a particular vulnerability.
Exactly. Vulnerability in how someone processes their world, their emotions, their relationships. It sets a certain kind of temperament, maybe, a biological baseline.
That makes so much sense. It's rarely just one thing in complex conditions like this. And it's interesting, too, this idea that these foundational influences might not be unique only to BPD, right?
That's a crucial point, yes.
I've seen research suggesting, a significant overlap with other psychiatric conditions. How does that fit into this polygenic picture?
It fits perfectly, actually. It's one of the most compelling findings from recent large-scale genomic studies.
What kind of overlap are we talking about?
They confirm significant genetic overlap with conditions like major depression, bipolar disorder, even schizophrenia to some extent.
Schizophrenia too. Wow.
Yeah. And to a lesser degree, things like PTSD and ADHD.
Okay. So what does that mean? Does it mean they're all secretly the same illness?
No, not at all. It doesn't mean they're the same illness, but it suggests they likely share some common biological pathways.
Ah, okay. Underlying shared vulnerabilities.
Precisely. Particularly pathways related to things like emotional regulation, how someone responds to stress, maybe even aspects of cognitive processing.
So maybe think of it like a shared genetic vulnerability pool.
That's a great way to put it, a shared pool. And then maybe different environmental factors or perhaps additional specific genetic variations might nudge an individual towards one particular diagnosis or another.
That's fascinating. It implies a broader landscape of mental health vulnerability.
It really does. And for clinicians, it helps explain why sometimes someone presents with symptoms that look like BPD, but also maybe depression or significant anxiety.
Because there might be this shared genetic underpinning contributing to that complex picture.
Exactly. Making that precise diagnosis a really nuanced art. It's not always clear-cut because the biology isn't always clear-cut.
Okay, so we have this shared genetic predisposition across conditions influenced by many genes. And if someone inherits these genetic threads, these vulnerabilities, does that mean it's just inevitable? Are they destined to develop BPD? That sounds, well, pretty daunting.
Absolutely not. And this is maybe the most critical takeaway message from all of this research.
Okay.
Science is incredibly clear on this. Genes are not destiny.
Yeah.
Having a genetic predisposition simply means an individual might be more sensitive to certain environmental triggers, certain experiences, but it does not in any way guarantee they will develop BPD.
So it's not a guarantee.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Scientists now really emphasize what they call gene-environment interaction. GXE, they sometimes write it.
Gene-environment interaction, so it's the combination.
It's always a dynamic, intricate dance between the two. Nature and nurture always working together.
That's much more reassuring. And I know our source material had a really great analogy for this and made it click for me.
Ah, yes, the alarm system analogy. It's a powerful one.
Did you share that?
Sure, it likens genes to the wires that set the sensitivity of an alarm system.
Okay, the internal wiring.
Right. How sensitive is it set? And then the environment is like the surroundings where that alarm is installed.
The context, okay.
So if the wiring is inherently sensitive, it's set to go off pretty easily. And the environment is chaotic or consistently stressful, invalidating, unpredictable.
Right, like a noisy, unstable place for the alarm.
Exactly. Then the alarm might go off too often or way too intensely or maybe at the slightest little thing.
Okay, that makes sense. The system gets overwhelmed.
And this is the really vital part in a calmer environment. More predictable, more supportive, validating. That same sensitive wiring might never actually cause a major problem.
Really? Even with the sensitive wiring?
Yeah. The alarm might stay silent most of the time. Or maybe it only activates when there's a genuine threat, giving the person time and space to learn how to manage it effectively. The sensitivity doesn't have to become a disorder.
And that analogy is incredibly powerful. It really makes you stop and think about how crucial the environment is. It's not just about the genes you inherit.
Not at all. The environment shapes how those genes are expressed, how that sensitivity plays out.
And this brings Anna's story right back into focus, doesn't it? When you apply that lens.
Absolutely.
She remembers these family stories, full of intense mood swings, explosive tempers, those long, cold silences.
Sounds like a potentially challenging environment.
Yeah. Her aunt had these periods of deep depression, just isolating herself for weeks. Her father, known for sudden, unpredictable anger, her grandmother would just retreat to her room for days, totally unresponsive.
A lot of emotional dysregulation around her growing up.
Exactly. No one in the family ever put a label on these things, like depression or anger issues, but Anna felt it. It was in the air, this pervasive emotional turbulence, these unspoken patterns weaving through the generations.
Right. She absorbed that atmosphere.
So that family history, it didn't doom her, but it shows how those genetic threads, that potential for sensitivity, can be passed down, setting the stage, creating that sensitive wiring, perhaps.
The predisposition?
But then when that sensitive wiring was combined with an environment that maybe often dismissed her intense emotion.
And validated her experience.
Yeah, or didn't provide consistent tools, or maybe just a safe space to understand and regulate that sensitivity. Well, those threads became not just part of her genetic makeup. They got deeply woven into the fabric of her struggles.
It's a perfect illustration of that gene-environment interaction. The wiring met a challenging environment, and the alarm started going off frequently and intensely.
It really highlights how profoundly our environment can shape how these predispositions actually unfold. It's not just one or the other.
Never just one or the other.
Ugh.
Okay, so maybe let's try and summarize the key points from this genetic deep dive for everyone listening.
Good idea. What are the main takeaways?
Okay, first, genes account for a substantial part of the risk for BPD. We're talking roughly half, based on current estimates like that 46% figure.
Right. Genetics are significant, point one.
Second, the risk is clearly higher in close relatives like siblings, and it decreases predictably with genetic distance like cousins. This pattern strongly points to genetics.
Okay. Higher risk for closer relatives. Got it.
Third, there is no single BPD gene. It's polygenic. That means it's influenced by many, many small genetic factors working together, likely creating that heightened sensitivity.
Polygenic, not monogenic. Lots of small influences.
Okay. Fourth, there's significant genetic overlap with other major psychiatric conditions, especially things like major depression and bipolar disorder. This suggests shared biological pathways.
Shared roots with other conditions. Makes sense.
And fifth, and this is absolutely crucial, genes increase sensitivity, they create the predisposition, but the environment plays a pivotal role in how or even if that sensitivity unfolds into the challenges associated with BPD.
Genes load the gun, environment pulls the trigger,
Mhm.
or maybe provides the safety catch.
That's one way to think about it, yeah. The environment is key in determining the outcome of that genetic sensitivity.
Wow, what a journey into this really intricate world of genetic influences on BPD. It's definitely not a simple cause and effect picture, is it?
Not at all. It's complex, layered.
Well, I really hope this deep dive has offered you listening some clarity and maybe a more compassionate understanding, whether you or someone is affected, or maybe you're just driven by curiosity like us. And this is really just one layer of understanding BPD, isn't it? Our source material promises to dive even deeper into things like early relationships, emotional survival strategies.
Yeah, the environmental side, the psychological development, lots more to explore.
Definitely. But for today, we've laid down that critical biological groundwork, the genetic piece.
And if we connect this back to the bigger picture, understanding these genetic predispositions, it isn't about feeling resigned, or trapped by your biology.
No, quite the opposite, hopefully.
Exactly. It's really about recognizing these inherent sensitivities and maybe understanding just how profoundly crucial things like supportive environments, early interventions, effective therapies, how crucial they can be in shaping outcomes.
Regardless of someone's genetic wiring.
Regardless of the wiring, it really empowers us to think about mitigating risk, fostering resilience, helping people manage that sensitive alarm system. It's not about accepting fate.
It's actually a message of hope, in a way.
I think so, yes. A message of hope and the power of environment and intervention.
So here's maybe a thought for you to carry forward from today's deep dive. If genes kind of set the sensitivity of the alarm, what simple daily adjustments could you make, perhaps in your own environment?
Good question.
To potentially create a calmer, more supportive space, whether that's for yourself or for those around you, regardless of what their wiring might be like.
Yeah, what small changes could make the surroundings calmer for the alarm system?
Something to think about. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning.